Today I'm going to tell you the story of Honoria O'Flynn. Think a long time ago. You're setting yourself in late 1500s, Southern Ireland. There are clans, and each clan has its own chief or king. And one of them was the O'Flynn clan. And the leader had a daughter named Honoria. So she was a Celtic princess of sorts, One day, she was walking along the beach, and she was out alone when she shouldn't have been, and she was taken by pirates. Pirates frequented the waters quite often. They had a sort of understanding with the clansmen that, if they stayed and docked their boats there, the English wouldn't come. So she wasn't afraid when she saw them, and they came up and they snatched her and they took her back to England, where they sold her to be somebody's wife. He was a landowner set for the colonies. So he goes to the colonies, and the whole journey there, Honoria is just praying that, the Lord will take her out of this, because she was a devout Catholic. She had dreams of being a nun. So she prayed and till the boat landed in the colony of Maryland. It landed on the Baltimore docks, and she was loaded off the boat, and her red hair was blowing in the wind. This gorgeous red hair that had first caught the eye of the pirates. So it's blowing in the wind, and she's out there, and she says, she's walking behind them, and she holds her head high. She doesn't walk like a peasant. She walks like a princess. Like she's been treated as a princess her whole life. And someone takes notice of her. And that someone was William Logsdon. William Logsdon was a indentured servant who was working off his time for his payment to come to the New World from England. So he had already worked it all off at this point. He had a small plot of land that he had also paid for with his time. So he was a tobacco farmer with 100 acres, and he was carrying this barrel of tobacco with him on his back to the docks to trade and barter for goods or whatever he needed for that month. But he came across Honoria, and he saw that she was not some peasant that should have been taken by these obviously he's 30 years older than her, this person that she's walking behind. And back then it was pretty easy to spot who was meant to be, to get, like, they're on their way to the church or the courthouse to get married. Honoria is a devout Catholic, so she has to get married at a church. Can't just be like a paper thing, she's too stubborn to let that happen. She would have thrown a fit. So she's taken, and William Logsdon walks up to the man walking in front of her and says, "Hey, I will trade you this barrel of tobacco, the New World's finest tobacco, for that woman behind you." And the man looks at the barrel, inspects the tobacco, looks at Honoria, says, "Yeah, okay," and thinks that a fair trade, and I guess this just wasn't uncommon back then. But it's so crazy to see how it's just, that stuff would just happen on the docks all the time. Anyway, so Honoria is taken by William taken away from the docks, and he brings her back to his dirt road on his way to his plantation. A little further down the road, his boarding house, and he walks her to that door, and he says, now listen, I'm not gonna keep you. You know, I have no intention of being your husband. I just feel as though you weren't wanting to be in that situation, so I got you out, and now if you could tell me where you're from, maybe we could get you home. And she opens her mouth, and all that comes out is Gaelic. So it's just, she's speaking Gaelic to him, and he recognizes the Irish tongue, but he does not understand a word she's saying. So he stops her, and he's like, okay, you're obviously from Ireland, so we'll try and track you down, and can I get a name? You know, he says name a couple times, and finally she understands that he's asking for her name. So she says, Honoria O'Flynn, in a very strong accent. And, you know, he recognizes that is a clan down there, so he knows that she is, he kind of puts two and two together and figures out that she's highborn, at least. And she's taken to the boarding house, and he boards her up in there, and he tries to get in contact with her father, but the woman who was put to care for her, Madam Skidmore, the owner of the boarding house, she pulls aside. She's pulled aside, and she's told that, you know, this is a highborn child, and you need to be very, very cautious about it. And the woman's like, oh, I'm gonna get a payday out of this. So she calls, she doesn't call, she mails a letter across the sea to the O'Flynn clan, and she's like, hey, I got your daughter, you want her back? Give me 1,000 pounds in gold. And they send it, and then Skidmore is never seen again. And Honoria is just kind of left to fend for herself, and she does. A couple years pass. She's now grown into a good colonial woman, and William is tending to the fields or something, and he's attacked by Indians, and he gets injured, and he's shot in the shoulder by an arrow, and that arrow hits him so hard, and he makes it all the way back to her boarding house, and he, you know, looks for help, and she nurses him back to health, and months pass, and he's still, you know, being nursed back to health, and they fall in love, and then he takes her to, he courts her for 2 years. He courts her until finally she says, okay, I'll marry you, but you have to convert to Catholicism because I want my kids to be Catholic. And he agrees, and they raise their kids Catholic, all 8 or 9 of them, and generations pass and generations until finally they end up, until finally you get to the generation where she is Carol Ann Logston is born to Kenneth Logston, and that's a direct descendant of Honoria O'Flynn. And then from that, Carol Ann had Christopher Cook, and Christopher Cook had Amanda Robin Cook. And that is the story of one of the biggest matriarchs, and one of our most beloved stories in the Logston family.